right? But
Yeah.
isn't this how you want to be treated?
Yeah.
So I think that's a good chance to engage students on how do we know that this is unhealthy, right? How do we know that he's being controlling and not loving? What do we see in this video that show that he's controlling and not loving here?
Monitoring her every move almost, or wanting to monitor where she is at all times.
The tone and the tone, I mean, I know in text message it's hard to tell the tone, but with this.
That's a problem in itself,
Yeah.
right? Because he said, nude pics, send me some.
Yeah.
It's impossible to tell the tone, but that could be a command. What's going to happen if she doesn't? Or it could just be a request, a statement. So the tone, definitely. And I'm sorry, remind me what you said?
I said he was just controlling from the standpoint, I mean, he was wanting to monitor her every
Yes.
move.
Monitoring where she is. What did he say about her hanging out with her friends?
Like,
Like,
Or in, yeah, for example, saying something that she wants to do.
yeah. Yes, yeah.
I'm thinking about too, as we're saying all this stuff, that kind of is where standard one's going to have to be introduced first, per se, because facts are facts. We have to teach the children, because we know we're healthy, healthy mentally, what is a healthy relationship, because they might start throwing out things that they think are healthy, but they're not, and we have to let them lovingly and explain, you might have been taught this, but this is truly what, just like any other fact, what it's going to do to your body, with the drug or whatever.
Yeah.
Because some kids will still push the idea that, like you were saying, that's all
Yeah.
they've known. But we do have to give them the true content knowledge. And then, like when you're saying about hanging out with your friends is lame, I get that, because during your teenage years, you want to absorb all your time with that guy or girl, but as we're older and we've experienced, you realize you've got to keep those close friendships with, because that strengthens your relationship with your other person the amount of time and learning more and communicate,
Yeah.
It all works together when you then come back together as boyfriend, girlfriend.
Yeah. Yeah, so thank you for saying that. And I would suggest kind of infusing that content knowledge into these activities. So rather than starting with, here's what a healthy relationship is, observe this video of an unhealthy relationship and let's talk about why it's unhealthy, do the activity first and then lead the students towards that content and those conclusions. But yeah, I think you're absolutely right that students might view this and think it's funny because it's so normal for them. I think it's on us to help them tell the difference between healthy and unhealthy, right? We know the kids are never going to put the damn phones down. It's just reality, okay? It's just something that we have to accept. There is a difference between being on your phone all the time and being in communication a lot with your friends and texting and Snapchatting and Instagramming, between that and a partner who is using those means of communication to control and shame and guilt you. Okay, maybe you're just having fun with your friends, on your phone, on the media. There's a difference between that, which certainly has impacts on the student, but the impact of that is different than their partner using those means to control them. So I think that's the kind of content and conclusion we have to guide our students towards. Yeah, and those healthy relationship characteristics that you understand, I think, can come out in that discussion.
I observed something the other night, really shocking.
Okay.
Oh, Lord.
3 hours graduation,
No.
260 kids. Wasn't a damn phone or a damn earbud for 3 hours. Didn't have to call EMS one damn time.
Oh, wow.
Who says they won't put the damn things down?
So
You give them a damn reason,
Mhm.
and you have some damn consequences, they'll put the damn things down. But we won't address that damn bear in the room, just like JCPS won't address busting. We're not gonna do it because it's a lot easier. We'll just let it slide by. But until we address that, we ain't gonna get nothing done.
So what do you think made the difference? Why did students not use their
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. You tell me. I don't have the damn answers, but I can tell the damn problem.
So was it that they couldn't get their diploma if they had their phone out or something?
I guess I don't know. I just sat there and watched. I kept waiting for the EMS to get a call.
Huh.
Withdrawals.
Well,
Never happened. So we all sat around, well, we can't make them put them up. Mamas and daddies won't let them put them up. They need them. We can't do it. We can't do it. Well, hell, we did it.
through some combination of circumstances, right? I don't have answers to the.
No, I don't either, but I'm saying, it's
Yeah.
a problem.
Yeah. I would say, just specific to what we're doing here today, there are some activities that have students engaging their devices. That's intentional. And it's also completely up to you if you want to see how you can have students be on their phones for class activities, if you feel like that is effective. Yeah, one of the, I think, approaches that we were trying to take is that, yes, being on your phone all the time, is it good for you personally? No. When you get a job, is an employer going to let you be on your phone all the time? No. But the phones themselves are not the problem, right? We have to give students experiences that help them engage skills for figuring out, okay, how do I use this responsibly? And that's really hard, right? That's really, really hard. Okay. This experience and how does it apply to our lives? So,
I'm sorry.
based on what we saw in this video, if every couple was like this, if every couple was one person constantly bothering the other on their cell phone, what would be different? How would it impact us as a community? Say that again?
Yeah, there'd be a lot of angry people.
Yeah, a lot of angry people, nobody would be happy. So that's the kind of question that helps students realize that, oh, if I'm being impacted by this, or if I'm doing this to another person, if everybody is engaging in this kind of behavior, that's going to be a real problem. So if one person is doing it, then it's also a problem. So those are the kinds of decisional questions that guide to a broader conclusion. So what we're going to do now, I'm giving you all a handout with some questions under each different portion. So what, and now what?
Thank you.
Okay.
Here, leave one for her.
Thank you. And we're going to watch a second video. So we'll watch this video, and then with your table, I just want you to come up with, in each category, what, so what, and now what? Just come up with like 2 questions that you might ask your class after watching a video like this to help generate that discussion, right? To help them draw out the conclusions of what healthy and unhealthy relationships are. Oops, wrong one. Students will probably laugh because
Phone.
because of the flip phone, and because sometimes also we laugh when we're uncomfortable. I've just anecdotally, there's a different video from the same source that I show a lot when I have done healthy relationships presentations in high schools, and there's a part when a survivor like turns her head and she has a bruise on her face. Students always laugh at that for some reason, because they're super uncomfortable with it, probably. But so you're dealing with whatever reaction this video brings up for your kids. In this what stage, what questions are you going to ask to help them engage their observations of what happened?
We chose what feelings did you have during the exercise?
Cool. Okay, so you would engage just kind of what personally did this bring up for you? What emotionally did this bring up for you? Okay.
And what stood out?
Okay. And how do you think they would react to that question of what stood out?
Well, they're gonna say the cell phone thing for sure.
Yep.
But the threat of suicide.
Yeah.
The reaction to the girl's friend, and how Sarah reacted to her when she addressed the situation.
Yeah.
That's stood out.
Yeah. So what stood out? And I like that you all said that the students would probably say that the old-fashioned phone would stand out, and that's okay, right? We can there is room for that, right? We can say like, isn't that kind of silly? Like, if you were making this video now, we would probably put in smartphones
They would
and
probably say
something more
it's
appropriate.
too.
Yeah. Okay. What about this
You could give them
table?
room to do that. Let's redo this video.
Yeah, that would be a great project. Yep.
We might mention, you know, I think if you're gonna do that one, you gotta have kind of a timeline, exactly what's happened.
Yep.
You know, the sequence of things that actually happen.
What's the sequence of
What's the
events?
sequence of events? You know, you gotta be able to, you just can't jump to the end.
Yeah. So this is events. This is a really important question to ask when we're discussing this kind of topic, because in the beginning of the video, this was not an abusive relationship, right?
Right.
Just like with the "that's not cool" video, it didn't escalate to some more controlling behaviors until towards the end. So here we have to talk about what's the sequence of events, what happened and what happened after that, and what happened third, what happened last, and that helps get us toward that question of, so what, right? Why is it important to us that abusive relationships don't look abusive in the beginning? Okay. For our so what questions, what are some of the things that you all would ask?
Go
Or
ahead.
were you
What do you
gonna?
think, Diane? I was a little bit foggy there.
Just what their take home message was. 'Cause it would be interesting to just see. Usually when you ask questions like, what's your take home message, you can gauge like if someone's experienced this themselves personally, or if it's something they watched a friend experience, or if they watched a mother or father or somebody at home experience, so.
Yeah.
And then you know how to address it and without asking who's experienced this personally.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. So asking what's your take home message, seeing what their connection is. Okay.
We talked about, can you relate to it personally? And then does it change, or does this challenge any of your values? But we also talked about how we might do that in a journal form, just
Yeah.
because they may not be willing to share out loud their personal feelings.
Yeah.
And something that's tough anytime we talk about these type of issues is not necessarily, well, now what? What do we have to do with the information too?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. So what do we do with this information? Let's get to that in just a second. I do want to think about this question of, does this challenge your values? Because I like this question a lot, and I don't know that as it's phrased it would make sense to students. So what's another way of asking this question?
Did it make you uncomfortable?
Did it make you uncomfortable? Right.
Yeah.
Why did it make you uncomfortable? Why did this make you feel the feeling that it made you feel? Cool. Okay, and our last question. So how do we get at that decision or behavior change? What are the questions you would ask to guide towards that?
We said that third one, based on this experience, what would you say are some principles or guidelines to remember whenever, like, this happens in real life?
So, what will you remember when this happens in real life? What are some of the things that you would hope that your students would say to that?
That they're gonna intervene. They're gonna, I'm always saying over and over again, you know, you're not mentally stable right now in your own teen years to take this upon yourself. You got enough stressors. So if you could find a trusted adult, a teacher, a counselor, your best friend's mom, your mom, that would be really helpful that they have somebody to go to talk through it.
Yep. So what will you do? What will you remember when this happens in real life?
If it was, so say the student was the actual victim in the situation, they can remember, you know, that this isn't normal, and that this is, you need to get out of this toxic relationship.
Yeah.
Red flag.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is a good way to lead into some of those other lessons around, okay, yes, it's important to do something. What will I do? Or yes, it's really important to see those red flags early on. How do I get out of a relationship that's unsafe?
It's a good segue into what do you do now? So he sent a text message saying that he can't live without her and he possibly wants to commit suicide. That's a whole nother topic and a segue into something different that needs to be
What's your
discussed
next
as well.
step?
What do you do in that situation?
Yeah. So if you were Sarah, what would you do in this situation? Yeah.
I would hope I would find a trusted adult. If I couldn't talk to my parents, it would have to be someone else I need to inform. Because I think, yeah, I think teens automatically think they can fix it or prevent somebody from wanting to commit suicide once they've made their mind up. And that's a big task for anyone to take on, let alone a teen.
Yeah.
So there needs to be some other people that needs to be involved.
Yeah. So you brought up a good point, and that's a great question about saying suicidal thoughts. I think that's another good question to engage with this specific video, maybe in the what section. So Kyle has made a threat to kill himself. Why do you think he is saying that? I'm asking you all. Do you think Kyle actually plans to kill himself, or given the context of this video, is he using it as a way to control Sarah?
You could never know.
You never
That's
know.
a hard
No.
situation to say, because automatically as a human you say, oh, he's just using it to get back at her. Because I even
Right.
said, of course he sent that text.
Yeah.
But you never know. Like, you just don't know. You can't say.
Yeah. So it could be one, it could be both. And that's why this is a really powerful question, is if you were Sarah, the person who received this threat, she cares about Kyle, obviously. He's also hurting her. So what can she do within the context of her own boundaries and her own safety to make sure that she stays safe, and that if he is serious about killing himself, that he does get help with that? Awesome. Any other questions you all would add to kind of get at that last part, the now what? Maybe you could ask something like, if you're doing this kind of activity early on in the curriculum, early on in the school year, you could ask your students something like, what skills do you want, or what do you need to know that would help you react in a situation like this? So you can get their input on how things are going to go for the rest of the year.
You can also ask though, how would you do this differently and make them create skits? But,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So how would you, so the video itself, or how would you make this experience different? Yeah. That's a great way of, I think that's a good trust building kind of question. So we're recognizing the students as experts and we want their opinion.
I guess it's important to talk about safety too, because you don't want them, if they've seen it in the community, or like he's saying he want to commit suicide immediately, she wants to go over and try to console him. They need to understand the importance of remaining safe and not putting themselves in a situation that can endanger them and the other person. Because automatically you see two people arguing on the street, people want to break it up. Like, is that safe, or do you call out, like those, because it's a question on here about what would you do in your community if you seeing that. So just remaining safe in that situation. I've seen situations, people break it up and the girl started fighting the guy that broke it up, and it just turned bad.
So yeah, how do you remain safe?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you all for participating. So this, I forgot, is this your all's first official day of summer break?
Yeah.
Well, thank you for being here. I hope you get a lot of like real summertime outside swimming and doing outdoor things.
It's
after
a
today.
beautiful day out there today.
All right. Nice.
Visible.
All right. So I'm, like I said, I'm going to model for you all two of the activities that are included in what we've come up with. This one is from the interpersonal communication skills section, and this is an activity to help students reflect on their own personal communication styles and get a little bit more clear on what makes them angry and how they deal with that when it comes up. Before I get there, I'm gonna give the floor to Megan for a little bit because we were talking on break just a little tidbit about that question of dealing with students who are afraid to make mistakes. So I'll let Megan share her insight.
I don't even know if we could call it insight, but I've been thinking about it ever since you asked the question around safety. And I understand that's it's an issue for all of us, right? Trying to establish a safe space in our classrooms and in our lives for where kids are going to be comfortable. And what I got hung up on is just the idea that, yeah, there's that forever, decades old thing about I don't want to have to try. I don't want to look stupid in front of my friends. And I think so much of that whole thing is about how that culture of the kids themselves, right? Like how they know they're going to be ridiculed or shamed by their friends or picked on by their friends. So to me, the culture shift is about building a safe space within their friend group almost, establishing some kind of culture in your classroom to the spaces that you can control, right? So in your classroom, perhaps even into the hallways or into their lives where if they at least have one or two kids perhaps that will make them feel safe and supported in taking that chance. And I don't know, I don't know. I haven't taught school for a really long time now, but I just remember thinking like that those kids who didn't want to try, it was rarely about anything that I had to do. It was about what are they going to experience as a result of that failure, when they're out and about. I don't know. So to me, that lends itself nicely to the future conversation that we're going to be working toward about being good bystanders, standing up for each other, creating a culture where kids support each other a little bit better than they do regularly. And maybe we'll find some answers to that. I don't know. Anyway.
Yeah, thank you for sharing
Well,
that.
I'm sure.
It's a really tough question that you asked.
It is.
I think it's culture.
It is.
Yeah, it is culture. So yeah, we are going to talk about bystander intervention though, because as you all know, the choices that we make and what we believe other people think and do influences culture. What we think other people think and do is not always what they actually think and do. But when we believe that all of our friends are going to laugh at us for making a mistake, then that sets up the norm where, well, none of us want to make mistakes now, right? None of us want to put ourselves in that situation where someone might want to laugh at us. So it becomes a problem of perception, what I think other people think versus what they actually think, or what I think other people do versus what they actually do. And this approach of bystander intervention helps us get beyond that in the context of bullying and sexual violence prevention, but I think the concepts could translate, so we can keep talking about that. But first, communication. All right, so we're going to do a communication activity. First, we're going to see another video, a clip from the TV show The Big Bang Theory. I don't know if any of you all are fans. I don't watch it that much. Not a huge fan, but I like this clip. I did not pick it actually. Candy, who has been helping translate these lessons to be classroom ready, she picked it. And so we're going to talk about different communication styles you're willing to have. It's how you deal with it and how you express it that makes the difference. But all of the situations listed on here, all of the triggers listed on here, I think are very valid situations when someone might be angry, right? If you are being lied to, if you are being treated unfairly in some way, it is valid to be angry in that situation. It's how you express your anger that impacts how other people might communicate with you and how other people might treat you. So how does it feel when those anger triggers come up? How do you know that you are angry? What are the physical and emotional cues that you get from your body?
Get tense.
Tense, yeah. Yep.
Biting your nails.
Biting your nails, yep. But it's a response to an emotion, yeah.
Stomach gets squeezy.
Yeah, you might feel knots in your stomach, nauseous, yep. So you all are familiar with these cues. Students may not be. They know what it feels like, but they may not have connected. Oh, when I have this emotional response, it also brings about these reactions for me. So there is a short mindfulness activity built into this into this section. I'm not going to take you all through it, but it engages students in, okay, how do we feel in this moment? Is there any tension in your body? Notice that, and then let's apply that to when we feel angry, right? How do we notice that? And then what are the skills that we have and skills that we can develop to get through those feelings in a healthy way? All right. Okay, so I took us through this pretty quickly. Do you all have questions? Okay. So the concluding message is that being aware of your own communication style, being aware of your own anger triggers is one part of the picture here. It's one part of avoiding and resolving conflict. In the section around using interpersonal communication, there is a companion activity that I would highly recommend. And it's not something I developed, it's something I've adapted from another curriculum. That is five steps for communicating about conflict. And it basically breaks down, how do you make a statement to someone when they have hurt you in some way, or when they're doing something that doesn't sit well with you? How do you communicate that to them in a way that where you take responsibility for your own feelings and also set boundaries and express your needs? So I would recommend doing those two activities together: communication styles quiz, anger triggers, and then talking about 5 steps for communicating about conflict. Okay. So that's one sample activity. I'm going to move us on to talking about bystander intervention, and then we can have a choice whether we want to take lunch or talk about mandatory reporting first and then take lunch. So think about that. For now, talk about bystander intervention. Okay. So bystander intervention is it's kind of the in vogue topic in violence prevention. There are a lot of programs. Green Dot is one, and I know it's at Iroquois, it's at Atherton as well. So that's one evidence-based bystander intervention program. We have adapted a lot of those principles into this lesson. So you'll get to see what they are at work, but something like Green Dot is a very structured and branded program, so we're not using that language specifically for that reason. All right, so this is the kind of lesson that really, it requires a little bit of personal vulnerability in that you discuss your personal connection to violence, and you decide what the most appropriate way for you to do that is. I'm going to model for you all telling like a story of self to talk about a time when I had a barrier to being a bystander. But again, you decide what is within your own personal boundaries as an instructor. So bystander intervention, what does that word mean? What is a bystander, first of all? What does a bystander do or not do?
Stand up for the victim. Sorry. Stand up for the victim. They know.
Yeah, so a bystander might make a choice not to stand up for someone who's being victimized.
I was gonna say there's so many witnesses at an event.
A bystander witnesses an event. That's really key. So a bystander witnesses, and then they have choices about what to do. Maybe they choose not to act. Maybe they choose to act in a way that is contributing to the violence. Maybe they join in, or maybe they do something to stop the violence or harm that's happening. Okay. Students might be familiar with the word upstander, bystander, and upstander. If you want to use those words, that's totally fine. I don't have a strong preference. But bystanders, basically, the essence of a bystander is that they're witnessing violence. In most situations where harm is occurring or could occur, there's at least one person around who sees what is happening. We tend to think of things like sexual violence, dating violence, bullying as happening far away from us or happening in a place where we can't see it or get to it. But most situations that escalate into more severe violence happen in front of us, and we see those red flags. So to tell a personal story of a time when I was a bystander and made a choice I'm not super proud of. So my freshman year of college, I was at a party, and personal detail I would not share with students. It may or may not have been called Wine Wednesday. Yeah. And I remember seeing there, it was probably 6 or 7 weeks into my freshman year, so I was still getting to know people. I didn't know the names of everybody who lived on the floor on my dorm, so that was kind of a barrier. I didn't know people very well. I was at this party, and a young woman who lived down the hall from me, whose name I could not remember, was there, and she was hanging out with this guy who was kind of clingy. And I didn't really think much of it. She seemed a little bit uncomfortable with it, but I thought it was just, oh, they're being awkward and flirting and maybe gonna hook up. So the party went on late into the night, fun was had. And then the next day, a couple days later, I actually ended up hearing that this young woman I had seen that was in this situation where she seemed uncomfortable, she was saying that she had been assaulted at that party. And then a couple of weeks after that, I remember hearing that she actually planned to leave our college and go somewhere else because of what had happened. And I remember thinking in that moment, like, oh, I noticed that. I noticed that she was uncomfortable, and I could have done something, but I didn't because I didn't know her that well. And I didn't know what was going on, right? I saw something that looked like flirting within the norms of what flirting is, and I made the decision to not do anything because I thought it would be okay. So that's one time when I was not an active bystander, when I made a choice to not prevent violence that happened. And I'm sure many of you all have been in situations like that as well. And I think about, since I started doing violence prevention work, I think about that choice that I made, and if I had acted differently, would this young woman have still continued at our college? Would she not have been assaulted? Would she have been able to, stay at this college that she wanted to go to in the beginning? There's no way for me to know that, but what I do know is and I can't know if my choice in that situation to step in or not would have made a difference, but I do feel like if I had acted differently, that things might have turned out in a different way. So bystander intervention is about noticing those signs and stepping in, and it's about making a choice between, sure, maybe if I step in it'll create an awkward situation, but that is a better alternative to someone being harmed. So there's my personal connection to the topic. I encourage you all to think about how you might narrate that in class. It doesn't really matter the kind of story you tell. It doesn't have to be about an instance of sexual violence, and it can be about something really small. Just a time that one of your kids was bullying another and how you stepped in, or a time when you were being bullied in some way and someone stepped in on your behalf. So think about your personal connection in that way. So bystander intervention is a kind of advocating. It's in that section because it's not just about our own health, but it's about guaranteeing the health of others. So what makes being a bystander hard?
You're banking. If you've been a bystander before and intervened, and you know the amount of stress or repercussions being put on you, or it makes you think, do I want to involve myself again sometimes?
Yes.
If you're using past experiences.
Yeah, so maybe you have a past experience as a bystander where you acted on someone's behalf and then there were consequences for you. I think that's relevant for a lot of students that live in communities where bystander intervention is really not the norm, and that there are often consequences when people are perceived to break the silence. Yeah. So potential consequences can make it hard to be an active bystander. What else makes it difficult?
Your emotions or feelings towards the victim. Maybe they don't like the victim themselves.
Maybe they don't like the victim or the person who's being harmed, and they're not going to step in on their behalf. Or maybe they're going to actively join in harming this person. Yeah. Yep.
Like you were saying, with your experience, just the relationship in general.
Yeah. What's my relationship to this person? Do I even have one? Do I know their name? Is it going to be weird if I, as a stranger, step in? What if my friend is the person doing the harm and it's a stranger that they are harming? How do I step in with my friend and maintain our relationship, but also let them know that that behavior is not okay? Yeah. Any other barriers y'all can think of?
It's just comfort.
Comfort, yeah.
Yeah.
Knowledge of the situation.
Knowledge of the situation. Okay. So, huh?
Like living where it's just like an ongoing thing where they constantly go letting each other or it's something more of a power struggle.
Okay. Sure. So is this something that happens a lot? What's the background to this? I definitely understand that that's a barrier. And I would ask, why is that a barrier?
Well, what I was actually thinking in my head is I used to live in Turkey where the culture is very different between men and women. And me and my sister were walking down the street, and again, I won't tell the kids this. We were both a little drunk and we were going like back home, and there was a woman like sitting on the curb crying, and her boyfriend was like clearly there just like ripping her, you know, ripping into her. And my sister's like, I'm gonna go over there, whoop it, you know, like she's like ready to go beat this guy up. I'm like, no, you can't. I'm like, this is different here. You can't walk over there and do that. I'm like, in America, yeah, I've seen my sister punch people right in the face for doing stuff like that, and I'm like, you know, but like, it's different. It's a different culture. You don't. That's not your life, and you don't understand. And I mean, is it still wrong? Absolutely. But it's not really my choice.
Sure. So, yeah, the cultural barrier of, is this acceptable? Is this an acceptable thing to do? Yeah. Okay. And then I would, I think you were hinting at this, Diane, just knowing what to do.
Yeah.
So many of us see harm happening and our immediate thought is, I want to directly intervene. But sometimes that's not an option, as you're highlighting. It's not an option in that scenario to go up and tell that guy, hey, that's a terrible thing to do, you're making her feel awful, and you need to stop. But what other things could you do in that situation, potentially, to demonstrate to them that people see what is happening? So being an active bystander is hard, right? It takes recognizing what those barriers are, whether they're personal or external, and making a choice to get around those, right? Making a choice to do something that intervenes in a situation where harm is or could happen, and do that maybe sometimes in spite of all of the challenges that exist. Sometimes it's not safe to step in as a bystander because of the perceptions that others might have about you. I'm not saying that's fair or right, but it's just a note to make sure that we are tailoring our bystander intervention strategies to what's going to be safe for our students. Okay, so we have chip man, direct woman, and then camera guy. And he was actually the first person to make a choice in this situation. He made that choice to film, but that wasn't really doing anything to stop the conflict. So he felt unsafe probably with what was going on. It's probably why he was filming. Sorry? Or to put on, or to, have that tabloid thing about it. But then finally, when others started stepping in and calling out this behavior that was unsafe or wrong, he felt safe too as well. So, we're going to talk a little bit more about how do we step into these situations. So I'm going to give you all some little notepads. What I want you to do is, I cannot walk and talk at the same time. Hang on, I'm going to pass these out first.
Thank you.
that back.
There's a video
Just some
kind of
extra
similar
ones.
like this, but it's a gentleman who, it's just about the perception of people, and he
His voice, or maybe like speaking like through gritted teeth when you're really close to someone else, when you seem really defensive. Those are things that tip us off that this is not a normal conversation, right? Somebody could be harmed here. Name calling or behavior change. So in the moment, that kind of name calling, and then the impact that it's having. Maybe this person used to be really outgoing and they're really withdrawn now.
But Caitlin, I think if you talk to kids, you know, all that sounds good, but you know where it all starts.
Social media.
Yes,
Yeah.
it all starts on cell phone or on social media.
Yep.
I mean, that, at least that's what they tell me. I said, well, wait, 75%? No, all of it. You know, all of it starts. You know, that really and truly, there's not much bullying that we see right there, but it all goes on social media, back and forth, on text messages and stuff. That's where it all.
Okay.
The person at our school get in trouble for following students to monitor the bullying. And there was actually, like, they were following the bullies. They were only following them, and they wouldn't, and the principal wouldn't, like, do anything about it. And then a girl, yeah, it was a hot mess.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think there's any doubt about it.
Like, it's just like, how can we as teachers monitor social media? I don't know.
Oh, I don't even do anything at Jefferson County.
So-
about your stuff.
No, ain't gonna do that in Jefferson County about it.
He was more of this helper in the school, and
Yeah.
he followed the kids on like Instagram.
Oh, okay.
So that's a.
Really? That'd be.
Yeah. So that's, I appreciate the effort that faculty person was putting in there to try and notice and diffuse those situations. And it's a two-edged sword, right?
Yeah.
Because the intention is good, but then
No.
it creates all kinds of weirdness in the school environment. It can, it's just kind of like an ethical gray area with following students.
Especially with,
Yeah. So, but I think this is something that you can talk about with students is, we're gonna get to bystander strategies in a minute. What do you all see? What do you all notice on social media that seems bullying? So we're talking about bullying and dating violence in, you know, the real life context here, but what would your students say? What do they see on social media that seems like bullying or violence?
a massive amount of negative comments under like someone's posts.
Yep,
Somebody
negative
will-
comments.
They'll take a video or put something up.
Yeah, putting
See
a
a
video or
video.
picture of someone up without their permission, maybe like an
Yeah.
embarrassing picture or video.
Yeah.
Hate groups.
Hate groups.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where they compare like a person to like something that would be like an ugly character or something. That's-
Yeah.
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 Comparisons.
Yeah.
Yeah.
nuts.
Yeah. Anything else?
Oh, yeah, we had
So
this.
and-so's picture, if you give me those two pictures, I'll give you these two. That happens
Oh.
all the
Oh,
time.
yeah.
So,
Yeah, all the
like-
Middle
time.
schools too.
Oh, yeah, middle
Making
school.
deals.
Yeah, they
Deals
treat them
out.
like Pokemon cards.
Yeah,
I've got this person and this person. If you show me
yeah.
hers and hers, then I'll send you
Oh, yeah, it happens all the time.
Okay. So,
all over the state.
yes, I think it's important to bring in those examples of, and you can specifically ask, what do you see online that you feel is bullying, right? I think a lot of these things continue not because the students really enjoy participating in them, but because it's the norm, right? It's what everyone is doing. So if you can highlight, again, the difference there between what people are actually thinking and doing and what people perceive that everyone else is doing, so they want to fit in. If we can frame those things as, you don't have to do that, you don't have to participate in that. If you feel like it's hurtful to yourself or others, you don't have to do it. And engage them as bystanders in creating a community where the norm is shifted towards, we're not going to do those hurtful things. So with that in mind, I think we have, it's been a good discussion. I think a lot of these Post-its are communication, physical, body language, someone making a point to show dominance by towering over them, being louder than them, notice someone crying. Okay. So, so we have all of our signs that we can see, right? All of the signs that point to when bullying is happening, when dating violence is happening. So these are the signs that tell us a bystander is needed, right? And these are the moments when we have a choice to step in and try to stop what is happening or intervene in what is happening or not. Those are the moments when we have to make that choice between, okay, I have these barriers to stepping in, I have these challenges to stepping in, but I'm going to try to get around those so that I can help this person, right? So when we see these behaviors, we have to make a choice to get around our barriers, but also about what to do. So some different options you might have. A lot of us feel like we have to directly intervene when we see harm happening, and that is sometimes a great thing to do. So you might seek help, you might step in directly when you see harm happening. So what would be a way to do that? You see one person make a negative comment under someone else's Instagram post, and you want to step in directly. How do you do that?
I deleted all my accounts. I don't have
I guess you would address, if you're doing it, if you're trying to do it appropriately, you would address the one person individually, not continue on the page to now where other people are gonna jump in. Does that make sense?
So a direct message.
Direct message, thank you.
Okay, so direct message the person who posted?
Who's bullying to say, you're wanting to stop this.
Okay. So direct message.
Like, don't try to respond to everybody,
Just brings you up.
because then it might make the bullier,
Yeah.
more angry.
Okay.
towards everything.
Okay, so you send a direct message to the person who is doing the hurtful thing, and you say, what do you say?
I can see where this message is gonna be taken as rude or hurtful to whoever the person was, X. What's your reason for doing that? Maybe just question or try to talk to them. What's your reason for doing this? Is there background information that you don't know about?
This could be rude or hurtful. I would be cautious with advising students to seek out more background information, because what we're trying to do here is prevent harm, not like help them figure out whose side they're on. So, but asking questions can be a good way to step in directly. A really good question to ask is, why is that funny? This is a good defense a lot when somebody says something especially something that's like rooted in something hateful or oppressive. So somebody makes a homophobic comment to a student who is gay, or somebody makes a racist comment to a student who is a student of color. The bystander could directly intervene with the person saying that thing and ask them, why is that funny, right? If they're trying to joke about it, why is that funny? And that forces that student who said that thing into the position of owning the fact that they are saying that something that's kind of bigoted. So why is that funny? Why did you post this? Okay, so these are ways to step in with the person who is doing the harm. How might you step in directly with the person being harmed?
Just ask them how they're feeling.
Yep, so check in with the person who is experiencing harm. How are you feeling? Are you okay? Do you need anything?
I know it would be situational, but for the most part, are we seeing that it's best to just direct message outside versus trying to step in on the flow of the message? I know, it would be situational, of course, but
Yeah.
I wonder for teens, because
Yeah, that's a good question to ask your students. What is safest? So what we can talk about here right now today is what different messages does that send? If you are stepping in directly in the comments, so say you have the time to reply to every mean comment on that post with a nice thing about this person, that sends the message to the person being harmed that someone sees this and someone cares, and it sends a message to all the other bystanders that, okay, there's a lot of negativity going on here, but one person at least is making the choice to reply with something positive. The benefits of a direct message are that it it takes the focus, I guess in some ways it takes the focus off the person being harmed so that they're not in that direct spotlight anymore so much, and they have that choice to talk with you in a more confidential setting or discuss with you in a more confidential setting. So I think it is situational. It's up to what the person who is experiencing that harm might respond well to. For people who are being bullied in that way, it might be even more embarrassing to have all the positive comments going on there. It might seem like it's, its own form of harassment. So it depends. It depends. Okay, so stepping in directly, you have options there. It's not always the easiest or the safest thing to do, right? What makes stepping in directly hard?
They'll start targeting
You could become the target. Yep, very likely, I'm sure, as you all have seen. What if it's two people right in front of you? So we're off social media right now. Two people are fighting, and it seems really tense. What's risky about stepping in directly in that situation? Your own safety, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So beyond stepping in, we have two other bystander intervention strategies: sidetrack and seek help. So the sidetrack, that's what we saw the potato chip man doing. So he didn't directly intervene in that situation, right? He didn't, physically he placed himself in between the people, so he did put himself in harm's way. And that was a risk that he was willing to take. That was a barrier
so subtle, though.
that he was willing to get around. But he did it in such a way that it kind of disarmed the whole conflict, right? If he had stood there like this, like very imposing, that might have triggered further physical violence. But he was just eating his chips, and it kind of threw off the people who were fighting. Like, what is this? What is this about? So a sidetrack is another way to be an active bystander. It's any kind of response that it's not something that distracts everyone else from what is going on, because we don't want to sidetrack in a way that like further isolates the person being harmed from help. But it's something that diffuses the tension in the situation and creates a chance for that person being harmed to get away if they need to. Okay? So what might be some ways to sidetrack, either on social media or in real life?
So I just finished the series 13 Reasons Why, and what I now am talking about is a lot
Season
of them,
1 or season 2?
What? What you talking
two.
about?
I haven't started 2 yet.
But
What was it?
they
13
all
Reasons
did
Why.
sidetrack.
What
Like
the
they
hell's
would,
that?
I can't remember
It's based off the book
names
where
right
a
now,
girl
but
makes 13
they would,
tapes about
so say
who
their
all
price was
contributed
like
to our suicide and who didn't do anything or stand up.
Alex specifically.
So I
Zach
watched
would
it from
come
a
up and
health
like, hey, Alex,
perspective,
we
because
gotta
all
go
the
to
kids were
PT.
watching it, and I
And like
needed
they
to
would
know
just walk away and versus just
what was
sit
we
versus
watching, so we
standing
can have
there.
conversations
So it's like
about
making
how
excuses
to
of,
handle
oh,
things
remember
differently.
so-and-so has to go talk to you. Oh, I thought we were gonna go to lunch today.
It's
Or,
disturbing
you know,
a bit,
it's,
though.
yeah, to where they have to be displaced.
It is, but
And
it's
that's
a
what
reality.
that's okay if it's only 2, but if we're gonna.
Well, I mean, I think though, I mean.
But it's
when
important
it's
conversations to
involved,
have.
because, but yeah.
See, I didn't take it that way. I took it as
Yeah,
just an
so that's a
important
good,
message
that's a
that
great
I
strategy.
think they
Let's
should be
let's
watching
stay
every
together,
business
y'all. We're
size
getting real
information
close to
about
lunch.
home.
So we're talking
They show
about
from the
sidetrack
standpoint how the parents
strategies,
missed out on the
and you
sign.
can direct this at
It shows
either
how
the person
counselor
doing
didn't
harm or the
do
person
well.
being harmed, depending on who you know.
It shows
If your
how
friend is the
friends
person
things
being
that
the
was
bully,
happening
maybe you
within
get them away
their
from that
friend
situation
circles,
and you
whether
say,
it's
let's
rape,
go
drugs,
to lunch, let's go somewhere else, let's go do something else.
It
Or
was
if you're
a little
friends
graphic
with the
because they
person who is
actually
being
showed
harmed, you
her
take them away in that way.
cutting herself. That was a bit much for me.
These can get really wacky. Students have a lot of
Even the
fun with
rape
coming
scene
up
was
with
a
sidetrack
bit much, but
techniques.
it's the reality of
And this is really good,
all the
especially
we
for
not know as
students who
teachers that one of our
themselves like being the
students
center of
was
attention. So maybe they come in and start dancing, or they start singing a song or
She had
something,
different
something that
moves,
just
she had
diffuses
hair,
that
she
tension
cut her hair. I
and
mean, just the different
like
signs that
creates a
sometimes-
situation that's bigger than that conflict that is happening.
So it's not something they should watch alone, though.
Food is another good sidetrack. Do you want some cupcakes? Something like that.
then when you have those
So,
discussions, you never
food,
realize how many
dance,
kids are
sing.
actually thinking about
What about
suicide.
social media? to sidetrack?
Yeah. How would you use social media to create sidetracks? Mm-hmm.
You can, like, say there was a change, you all finish that homework, then,
Yeah.
I feel like it's impossible to sidetrack on social media because
Yeah,
even
that's
if
the
you
thing,
post
it's
something new to try to
hard.
get it away from it, you just
It
look
keeps
up and it's right there.
Yeah.
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 The post is still
Yeah.
there. Whatever they said is still there.
Yeah, so that's an ongoing challenge with social media. Something I have heard, yeah,
Sorry.
what's up?
You can report the picture or report the post.
Mm-hmm.
Would that be
The seek
counted as?
help, though.
Oh, okay.
But that's a great suggestion. So report the post. Something that we have heard from our Green Dot students at Atherton and Iroquois is they will do more proactive things to influence the culture. So say there have been some negative social media posts going around, the students will like explicitly like have a campaign. They wouldn't call it that, but they will like coordinate really positive posts. They will coordinate sharing things maybe about this person who is being bullied or just positive things in general to shift the overall tone. So that might be another sidetrack strategy as well. It's hard when the stream is constant and ongoing at all hours of the day, but it could be something to suggest. Post something positive, or get your friends to post something positive. Okay, report the post I heard. So seek help, like you all said, it's getting other people involved. Report the post. What other ways can students seek help? Mm-hmm. Uh-huh. Okay, what if you, so we're talking again about real life scenarios. You see two people bullying each other. You don't know either of them very well, but you know the person doing the bullying's friend. Maybe you could engage that friend and go get them and say, hey, I'm not really cool with what your homeboy is doing.
I mean, they always have cell phones. Why can't they just call the school office? You know what I'm saying? Like,
Because they're not supposed to have those cell phones.
you can in between classes according to Jefferson County's rules.
Yeah.
So,
But if it's a case of an emergency, why wouldn't you still pick up the phone and call the office? Somebody can come.
let's talk about that. Why wouldn't students call the office?
Because they want to see the mess transpire.
There's that whole train wreck thing, like, oh, I want to see this go down. Yep.
But if they're going to get help, I just feel like it's quicker to just,
Yeah. So I
even
think
if they just put it on speaker and let them just listen.
that's
At
a
some
great
point they'll figure out it's fight.
that's a great thing to suggest. So maybe you don't want to be the person who is
Yeah.
saying like, oh, come help me, but you put your phone on speaker and you put it in your pocket, and someone in the office will hear what is happening. I would say that things like that these are for really severe incidences, right?
Yeah.
When there might be a really serious fight going on. Again, we want to keep our examples and scenarios that we give focused on those more subtle examples, just so that we get students accustomed to the idea of stepping in when the stakes are lower, and then that will build them up to hopefully being able to step in when the stakes are higher. All right, we're going to take lunch really soon, y'all. Stay with me. So we have our potential student, and you didn't feel comfortable intervening in that moment. Maybe you're kind of shy. Maybe you don't want to, intrude on this person's personal space. How might you intervene? Yeah. Tell the teacher what you noticed. Ask if the teacher can check in. Okay. Cool. Awesome. Maybe one more scenario to read.
A classmate seems to need to check in frequently with their partner, always telling them what they are doing or who they are with.
Okay. So you notice this as a bystander. Your classmate is always texting his girlfriend, and he's always saying like, I'm going here, here's who I'm talking to, and always checking in with her. So what would you do if you notice that?
If you're a student.
if you're a student? What do you think your students would say or do?
My students will ask me why they always want to know.
Mhm.
Yeah. So they would tell you, like, the defensive, like, it's weird, why is she-
Why
Mhm.
so,
why is she pulling your phone
Mhm. Okay.
then they love the word clicky. They would tell them that person being clicky.
Okay. 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 What else would you do? Or would your students do?
Does that person actually need to know where they are all the time, or is this person just saying, this is where I am, don't worry about it? I tell my wife where I am all the time.
Right.
I
Right.
want her
So
to know where I am, just in case.
yeah. Yeah. So
I've always told her where I am. She's always known where I am. I feel like it's rude of me for her to not know where I am.
say that one more time.
I said, I think this is assuming that there's a history of this person feeling like they have to be in full communication with
Yeah.
with the control part.
Yeah. So that's a
Person they need
great
to
point.
find out is with their parents.
Yeah. So this might be a situation where your students say, if this is the first time that they've noticed it, maybe they don't step in, and that's okay. If this is the 20th time that they have noticed this and their friend is saying like, oh, my girlfriend makes me feel like really controlled, I don't like this, if they're indicating that it's having some negative impact on them, then it might be time to step in. But it's also important to validate to students that it's okay, right? You're not a bad person if you don't step in the first time you notice this kind of sketchy thing going on, but make a note of it. And you can add to your list of bystander strategies, step in later, right? Maybe now's not the right time, maybe you don't know how right now, or you're just not very concerned yet, but do it later. All right, so it is now noon. It seems like you all are needing a break, so let's go to